Well, we're sitting down talking to Chris Lowery. He is the outgoing chairman of the Commission of Higher Education. Never seen him smile so much in my entire life. So, Christopher, my friend, always good to talk to you. Why are you smiling, my friend?
Abdul, it's always good to talk to you. First of all, part of the reason I'm smiling is because I'm sitting here talking with you. This is always fun to do. And I'm starting to be reflective about the time here at the Commission now. Gosh, going on 4 years, and some things have gone well. I think we've made some progress, so I'm pleased about that. As probably you've heard me say oftentimes, I'm pleased but not satisfied. There's still work to do, but I'm pleased with the work that's gone on, and seriously, I was really looking forward to this conversation anyway. It's been too long.
Well, you can talk to my wife then, because she's starting to listen and talk to me. Well, let's go ahead and get started. 4 years ago, you came here, head of Commission of Higher Education. What did you notice? What were some of the challenges still facing higher ed after your predecessor left?
Yeah, so a lot of great things going on in higher ed. But when I got here, the first thing we looked at was the attainment rate here in Indiana, so post-high school attainment rate. And, the state had set a really audacious goal for 2025, and it was clear we would not get there. And so we stepped back and said, I think my business background, and only approached it how I thought I should, which I thought we should, which is, from a business standpoint, we did a situation assessment. And, the three big rocks we uncovered were that the college going rate, especially high school kids, had declined precipitously for a decade, from about 68% to 53%, that the college completion rate was improving, and it was good, but it wasn't good enough. And then the one that was really surprising was we as a state have been really good at bringing talent in here to go to our schools, but we've been really kind of crummy at keeping them. And so now I just summarized that like in about a minute, but there was a lot of digging in and saying, so what could we find that really affected the college attainment rate in Indiana? It's pretty simple. You got to get people in, you need to complete them. And then now my very strong view, we got to keep them here. Right? It's no secret to your listeners and readers that we don't have an ocean beach anywhere. We don't have any mountains.
We got Lake Michigan, but that's about it.
Right? Yeah. And by the way, go to the dunes if you haven't been. It's a great place. We've got Lake Michigan. We've got a couple of little places you can ski and so forth. But people get the point. And we're not 75 degrees, 11 and a half months a year. We have all the changes in weather. I personally like them. Right? But the point being...
And somebody gets to change the weather on the same day.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I know. Like this morning we were talking about that. It was chilly, and then it's going to be hot this afternoon, as you either walk home or drive home. And but anyway, really kind of boiled it down and said, look, those are the big factors, and how do we go after those? And I think we've made some progress. As you know, we put a lot of focus on the college going rate. Almost all of the drop that had occurred in the tenure period was with lower income students. It stayed pretty flat in terms of middle income to upper middle income, upper income students, and where we had really lost ground was with lower income students. And when you think of all those things together, our view, my strong view, has been let's make it accessible, let's make it affordable, let's make it quality, and make sure students have good outcomes so they can be productive out here in society and stay in Indiana.
It's interesting to talk about affordability, because it's always been one of the big challenges of a college attainment, because before it was like, this tuition is going through the roof, got these books, got these fees, got housing, the whole 9 yards, and if you're it's tough enough for a family of means with 2-3 kids in college. You got to take out basically 2-3 mortgages. I can only imagine what it's like for somebody who wants to, go to a state school and have to pay and basically buy a car for one semester's worth of tuition.
Yeah, and that's a big. I'll break that out in a couple of different ways. So one, there's the reality of the cost, right? Because it had gone up for so long. One of the things that we got out of the data was that Indiana, our state colleges, and by the way, not just Purdue, but our state colleges and universities had been doing a good job of holding the line on tuition. I think when I got here, we were 6th or 8th best in the nation, which is pretty good, but nobody was talking about it. That served as a catalyst for us to do something that we've never done in state history, and we don't think any other state has done, at least in recent years, and that was this past spring, Governor Braun and I recommended to the to the commission, the body I report to then set a recommendation to our state institutions to hold tuition and fees for 2 years. Like, our state's never done that. And the commission, after I took them through the whys we should do this, what the positive impact could be to students and so forth, unanimously adopted that. And, we sent that to the state, colleges and universities. Every one of them agreed and adopted that. That's historic. We didn't get a lot of press about it, and that's okay, because at the end of the day, it's better for students. The other things we did, and maybe we'll delve into some of these, Abdul, is, we expanded the 21st Century Scholars Program. Until 2023, when we got the law changed, we basically had to chase these kids down in 8th grade, 7th and 8th grade, kids who are on free and reduced lunch. That's the essential qualification for it, low-income students. We had to sign them up. It was an inordinate amount of time trying to do that. Well, I don't know. I looked at it, and a lot of our partners looked at it and said, wait, we know who these kids are, right? Why would we not just automatically enroll them? Have I missed something here? And, obviously a lot of folks came on board, from businesses to philanthropy, nonprofit organizations, K-12. Everybody came together and said, gosh, this makes a lot of sense. Legislature, Governor Holcomb at the time agreed, and it passed almost unanimously through every step. Here's the bottom line on that. Thinking about those students from low-income households and making it more affordable. During the 4 cohorts that we've enrolled since then, so 8th graders at the end of 23, 24, and 25 now, and the first set of 7th graders, like of this year, those 4 cohorts, we would have enrolled about 80,000 kids, 20,000 per year, because that had been our trend. We've enrolled nearly 190,000. I mean, wow. A lot of people have asked me, so, what'll be the thing you look back on, with, most satisfaction, Chris? Oh, that's it. I mean, you and I have known each other for a long time, Abdul, well before my role here. In my professional 40-plus year career, that's at the top of the list. I mean, that's in a matter of 3 years, call it 4, but with these cohorts, we've enrolled roughly an additional 100,000 low-income kids who are going to get the shot at an education that you and I have. And, the ability to, with hard work and all of those other things, have a good life. I mean, the data don't lie, right? Economic, social outcomes just are better. Those statistics never waver. There's never an aberration in them. And so focusing on that cost side of it, I think we've done a lot to focus on that, especially helping low-income students. We expanded the funding for the Frank O'Bannon grant, went back and restored cuts that had been made all the way back in the Great Recession, 2009 or 10. What that's going to translate into is, between when we did that, which became effective in 2023, and the end of this decade, it's going to result in an additional $250 million in support for low-income students in Indiana to go to college. I mean, I keep saying we're going to see the big effects of all of this, really starting in the 2030s as more and more students are going, they're completing, they're coming out. And you think of that pipeline, getting students able to go. We changed the performance funding formula. We reallocated our own resources here at the commission to help students not just go but succeed. When I started, our completion rate, because I'm always worried about our rankings compared to other states, and have set a number of metrics to be top 10 by 2030. We were 14th in the nation at completion rates. So, yeah, pretty good. Not good enough in my view. And we are now 9th in the nation at completion rates. That's about the value of college, too. And, of course, you know me well enough. I moved the goalpost on our team and said, 9th is great, but, y'all, we need to shoot to be number 1 by 2030, right? And so, anyhow, I'm rambling on. But those are some things that I just don't think this has been rocket science either, right? How can we help more students go? How do we keep it affordable? How do we keep it accessible? How do we get them to complete? And how do we get them to stay here? Getting them to stay here. That was something that wouldn't have been on my radar But when we did that deep dive, when we did that, I know it sounds nerdy, but that business-oriented situation assessment, wow, we saw we're really good at bringing students here, like I was talking about, but we weren't very good at keeping them. 8th or 9th at bringing them here and roughly 40th at retaining them. There's something wrong with that picture. So now the performance requirements for our state institutions, including money that's attached to it, very importantly, they have to have a strategic plan and make advancements on keeping students here. They do. They do now because we require it.
We're talking to Chris Lowery, the Commissioner for Higher Education, outgoing Commissioner of Higher Education. Chris stepping down at the end of the year. Chris, it's interesting you talked about sort of those performance metrics for colleges, universities. I can automatically see the pushback. Well, we take students as they are. We're not responsible if they don't finish. How can you punish me because a kid dropped out, didn't go to class, blah, blah, blah. I could see, and don't get me wrong, I love higher ed, a product of higher education, but I could see every excuse in the world to say, for example, when the governor talked about, okay, degrees, we want to be students being able to find a work. I'm sure art history is great, but being an art history major, maybe in Goshen or Paoli, isn't necessarily going to get you where you need to be.
Yeah, it was interesting when we started talking about the going rate as an example. We had some robust discussions. How's that? I'll put it that way. But what I was so pleased was that first, from the side of higher ed, the kind of candid conversations we had were really productive. And the plans that they've put together and they've started instituting for graduate retention are they're amazing. It has spurred more and deeper relationships with employers. That'll benefit students, right? And from the employer's standpoint, it spurred them to be more deeply involved with higher ed. When I first started talking about it, I would talk maybe to a university president and about some of the challenges, maybe of getting employers in, et cetera. And I would just at some point only half jokingly say, so when's the last time you had lunch with fill in the blank, well-known CEO of this company or that company, right? And there'd be a pause. And I go, hey, by the way, I'll be glad to connect you with her or him. And then similarly with some of my friends in business and saying, so, you need talent, right? Yeah. Wish we could get more of it, et cetera, et cetera. And I go, yeah, so when's the last time you had lunch or breakfast with President so-and-so from XYZ college or university? You want me to text both of you right now so you guys can get connected, right? And it wasn't to be a smart aleck, but it was to make the point, look, you've got to do your part. We'll do our part. And all of that said, I've just been so proud to see what they've done. Universities that are deploying their own alumni who are early to mid-career. I always say about the alumni who are in their 20s and 30s, they don't have money yet, but they can write checks. But they love their alma mater. And if you just ask them, hey, would you mentor a student for us? Hey, every year, would you do a mock interview with your students? By the way, my undergrad school, the O'Neill School at Bloomington, I did that for them for years. I would do mock interviews with students, on campus, on the phone, and it was before I could write checks. And I credit them for getting me engaged. And then later I started writing checks. And there's a scholarship down at the O'Neill School with our last name on it. And but all of that to say, I've just been so pleased to see how creative they are. They have been one school I believe has more than 4,000 alumni in this state who are engaged in supporting their students toward career goals. Wow, they didn't have to spend $1 zillion to do that. Instead, they got folks who already love the university involved. The students love it. The employers love it. So again, this wasn't rocket science, but it's helping people figure out how to work together.
In other words, it's basically showing people how to think three-dimensionally.
Oh, exactly. Yes, absolutely, Abdul. And I think when you've got folks who are, there's really something common they're trying to solve there, right? That the employer needs great talent. The institution wants that great talent to find a good outcome. The student in this process wants all of those things, and if you can just kind of help people get on the same page,
And it helps the university because, hey, look at our success rate, look at our graduation rate, we get more students to come here.
That's exactly right, Abdul. And I know we just announced an increase in enrollment for the 4th year in a row. By the way, record enrollment increase for Indiana residents. So people who live in Indiana going to schools here in Indiana, we had the largest increase in in-state resident enrollment since 2010. So it's trending right. It's trending the right direction. Things like, the pre-admissions work that we do now, it's kicking in. We just had the idea that we could create a better marketplace for education in Indiana. I know that sounds silly, right? But no.
I do have a question about that because when I saw the data this morning, I was like, I would definitely talk to Chris about this. Is it one thing in particular, or is it just sort of the economy right now? Like, hey, because when economies are kind of sort of the downturn, people go back to school. When not, they go to work.
Yeah, we definitely think it's a number of these things we've been putting in place that are. That we're seeing the enrollment increases from. Our pre-admission strategy now, this fall was the 3rd time we've done it, fall of 23, 24, and 25 now. Again, wow, this is not complex. Not complicated. We thought we could create a better marketplace for students and their families to go to college here in Indiana. And it was this simple. We approached the high schools in Indiana and the public and private colleges and universities in Indiana and said, what if we could tell high school seniors at the beginning of their senior year and their parents or guardians, every place in Indiana they would be admitted to just based on GPA and or SAT. And people kind of looked at us and said, I should have had a V8. That sounds pretty simple. It is, right? So every high school junior now takes the SAT. Great. So we've got all that. We've got access to GPA. Nobody sees the individual matchup, right? But then we go to the institutions, the higher ed institutions, and say, look, we're agnostic. You tell us what the cut is, GPA and or SAT. You just tell us, right? And you just match up the data. And then we send these letters, actually hard copy letters to real addresses with mailboxes in Indiana. The kids get one, the parents get one. And, Abdul, so yesterday morning, they had this little event for me yesterday, kind of Chris is going away kind of thing. And yesterday morning, I received a text message from somebody, by the way, I think you know her, and said, hey, I can't be there. I'm traveling out of state and all this. And she had a photo in the text she sent to me of the letter their daughter, a senior in high school, had received. And it listed, 25 or 30 public and private schools. I get that regularly now every fall from parents, some of whom I've never met, right? They find my cell number, they get my email address, and they're just like, they're going out of their minds how great it is that now their student knows. Just any of these that I apply to, I'm in. And we know that has had impact. And again, to me, it's making more accessible, getting information to students, getting to their families. I have so many families, parents that contact me and go, our family had no idea all of these schools were even in Indiana. Last year, a principal from Southwest Indiana, I'd done a presentation. She comes up to me. She's practically in tears. And she goes, so that letter you all send? I said, yeah. And she goes, our son received one. And I went, oh, great. That's great. What's he doing? She goes, well, let me tell you first. He had 3 schools he had narrowed it down to out of Indiana. He's now narrowed it down to 3 schools in Indiana. And I went, okay, touchdown, right? It just by getting people some basic information. And she said, yeah, and then you had information on financial aid, just some other basic building blocks. I think it's so easy, whether you're, in an agency or whether you're at a college or university or someplace else, just to take for granted that, everybody knows how to do this. No,
they don't.
No, right? Like hardly anybody knows how to do this.
I joke and tell people it's the curse of technically being in a bubble. Like, well, don't you know this? I was like, well, no, because other people have lives and other things going on.
Yes. Well, and the other thing I want to touch on too, which I think is just fascinating, is the cost of college itself. Yeah, it's gone up a lot over the years. It is an investment. I think it was interesting. I think in your comment you mentioned that sometimes the investment is the equal cost of a car. in Indiana, the last time I checked, a student graduating from undergrad, the students who have debt, and some do, right, that the debt for a student undergrad who does have debt, the average was around $28,000 or $30,000. That's an investment. However, I know this too. That's about the price of the cheapest car you can find on the market new. And as I always tell folks, look, I know which one loses value the minute
you drive off the line.
You drive off, right? And the other one, I know it appreciates in value. And then you got to do something with it, right? You got to work hard and all those things. I know which one gains value. The interesting thing to me is that the narrative and then the understanding is also often wrong. Not in your news source, but not in what you do, Abdul, but sometimes, including, especially so, some of the national publications, right? They'll do a profile story, and they cast higher ed as everybody goes to school and has $250,000 in debt. They have this weird degree from Columbia or USC, and they can't find a job part-time pouring coffee in Indiana.
And I'll add something to that. I believe me, add a couple other things to those equations. They're doing with some woke professor who hates Democrats, Republicans, blah, 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 and it's just a mess, and we need to stomp this down. And yes.
Yeah, right? I mean, so somebody will grab onto that. And even national media, without mentioning the publication, I had a robust discussion with one of my favorite publications like a year and a half ago or so. And this person, long, great conversation, said, so why do you think people are questioning the value of higher ed? And I said, seriously? You do read your paper, right? And he said, like, what do you mean? I said, well, you've had front page profile articles with what I just said. Like everybody has $250,000 in debt, and they can't find a job, and it's some weird degree. I said, you've picked the aberration. And then I went through my little stats, and I said, look, in Indiana, and I know this is nationwide. Look, at the bachelor's degree level, especially bachelor's degree level, which is the game changer, here's like the average debt. And then when you look at improvements, and I said to him, look, we report on this all the time. We talk about this all the time. I was being a little snarky. I said, let me give you a few kind of data points, I said, little things like unemployment, labor participation, wages, net wealth accumulation. I don't know, like utilization of SNAP, Medicaid, infant mortality, life expectancy. I said, each one of those improves measurably when you go from no high school diploma to a diploma to an associate degree or some college and a bachelor's and higher. And by the way, Abdul, we've been tracking that 3.5 years since I arrived, most of those numbers, and we've added a couple in there during that time. We've never seen a statistical aberration. Each one of those improves with each level of education, and has now for 40-some months that I've been here. Right? So part of it is, one, recognizing, yes, it's a big investment. It's a lot of money, and I would not deny that to anybody. We had 2 kids who went through. My wife and I both did, kids with graduate degrees and stuff. So, yes, it's an investment, but I do think some of the narrative, like you were saying, the aberration is what gets pulled out. Man, we see it too much in social media, especially. Like, don't even start me there. So, we have to help people be really informed, and then they'll make good decisions. But the other thing is, and I think we've been serious about it here in Indiana, we still have to keep the foot on the pedal of making it affordable. Those things I was mentioning earlier, the fact that I think it was pretty bold of the state for us to recommend to the commission and then the commission to the institutions to freeze tuition and fees for the next 2 years. Our state did it. There was probably a bit of pain in some ways, a bit of challenge in figuring that out. But those are the kind of things businesses do oftentimes, and the beneficiary on all of that will be the student. Trying to hold the cost down, make sure that we're providing support to low-income students, especially making sure the programs have fidelity, are delivered with fidelity, they're high quality, and that students have good outcomes.
Chris Lowery with us for a few more minutes on the program today. We're almost out of time to talk about the good for Mr. Lowery. When you look at how technology is sort of changing, We were talking about AI just a few minutes ago. Things that would take us spend hours and hours and hours working on. Now it's done like 10 minutes. We could focus on. I tell people, I'm the architect, but my AI program is the builder. How is AI going to transform higher education as we get ready to wind down our conversation here?
I think it's going to transform higher education much like it's going to transform the rest of society. This is the latest wave in technological advancement. There are several books that have been written that really show what progress we've made roughly in the last 250 years. Interesting, right? Getting ready to celebrate something here next July, 250, right? Just the advancements that have been made in that 250 years, then especially so since the late 19th century. They have increased the velocity of improvement in society. And it's because we become more productive. Productivity is, it is at the ground level what drives advancement. And of course, that productivity only, comes about through increased knowledge, increased ability to execute with speed.
And we can also produce more with fewer people.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you know what I always think is interesting about that is when you look historically at great technological advancements. So let's say it's, moving from walking to, having saddled horses and then wagons that go with that. Let's face it, the locomotive and the automobile put a lot of wagon wheel makers out of business. And then along came Henry Ford, who may have had the most transformative impact to our economy in the last couple of hundred years. And then from that, came the next thing. And I'm bullish, first of all, on education, and you know that. But I'm also bullish on technological advancements. To me, technological advancements like AI, quantum computing, I don't think we even comprehend yet the positive impact that is going to have. It allows us to execute what we would normally execute more rapidly, and allows us then to do things of higher learning, higher levels of learning, higher levels of knowledge. That when you use ChatGPT to summarize something for you, or to put it in the voice of one of the parts of your enterprise, it frees you up to do bigger work. It's going to free up folks in medical technology, pharmaceuticals, other life-saving advancements to go then do the harder, bigger stuff. I'm absolutely convinced it's going to rapidly increase discovery. We don't talk nearly enough when we talk about higher education about discovery. We'll talk about research, and then again we'll go down some hole on that. But so much of discovery that has really happened to humankind has happened in the last 200 years. And, the degree to which we can make that happen faster, and that somebody can, take their intellect, their curiosity, their knowledge, and find the next thing, right? I look at so many advancements, life-saving advancements that, 250 years ago, 85% of the people on this planet lived in subsistence poverty. Subsistence poverty. There are 4 levels of the way the OECD and the UN and so forth look at how well people are living. Lowest is subsistence poverty, and then there's level 2, level 3, and level 4. And level 4 are advanced, societies like ours, Western Europe, North America, Australia, et cetera. And the number of people, the percentage of people on Earth who were living in that lowest, worst level was 85%, roughly 85% when this nation was formed. It's less than 10% today. Wow. And, it's the advancements that have occurred, underpinning all of this. I'm going to say this because it's true. Underpinning all of this are education, it becoming more ubiquitous across a lot of societies. Singapore, in my view, is maybe the best example of where it rose in a mere 60 years. Underpinning it being education, the free markets, the modern business system and corporation, and research and discovery. And I mean, I am so excited about what AI and what quantum and what the other thing we're not even thinking to talk about today is going to pop up in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So, yeah, that's part of the reason. As you came in here and you said, man, you're smiling. That's part of the reason, because I know what we're on the cusp of. We formed a small working AI council, just people. It's nothing formal. It's not sanctioned. It's not chartered anywhere. But with university folks and others to start saying, how more should we be thinking about it? Yeah, with any technology, should you have areas of caution and always be, good stewards of whatever you're entrusted with? Absolutely. And AI is just one more example of that. But I see it impacting not just education, but then what I believe is a result of education, which is that ability to discover, that ability to produce, that ability to make life for humans on this planet better.
Chris Lowery, my friend, always a pleasure, sir.
Man, it's always a pleasure to be with you, Abdul. It's been too long, and please don't be a stranger or let me be a stranger after I step out of here on October 10.